Real Madrid won back-to-back Champions League titles in 2022 and 2024. They have Mbappe, they have Bellingham, they have Vinicius. On paper, this is the most expensive attacking unit in the history of club football. And yet people inside that dressing room, not journalists, people inside it have described the environment as unmanageable. Players more concerned with their own standing than the result. A culture where nobody is truly held accountable because everyone is too important to touch. The question the club has been avoiding is, if the problem isn't talent and the problem isn't money, what exactly is it? Real Madrid does not need a new striker. It does not need a new system. What it needs is for the dressing room to become uncomfortable again. And Mourinho, whatever the controversy is, the only manager working today with a documented history of walking into a room full of protected egos and actually dismantling them. Start with this number, 0.72. That is how many goals Mourinho's Benfica conceded per match across their first 25 games this season. For context, this is Benfica, a club that spent the last decade being taken apart in European football. 25 matches, 15 wins, 5 draws, 5 defeats, goal difference, plus 27. Roughly 40 to 45% of those games ended with Benfica not conceding at all. Their XG difference sits at the 85th percentile across European leagues. PPDA, how aggressively a team presses lands at the 78th percentile. These are not the numbers of a side sitting deep and grinding. They press with shape. They defend with their brain. Possession sits at the 62nd percentile. Mourinho is not trying to dominate the ball. He's trying to dominate the game, which is a different thing entirely. 1 year ago, he was managing in Turkey at Fenerbahce. One bad Champions League playoff exit. That was enough for both parties to part ways. But Mourinho has never been a tactical innovator in the way Guardiola is. He doesn't build systems the game hasn't seen before. What he builds is a specific kind of environment. One where individual accountability is not optional. Where a player's comfort is something to be disrupted, not protected. At Benfica, you can see it in how they defend. A back four that holds its shape, even when wide areas are under pressure. Midfielders who track runners obsessively. Forwards who work back, not because a system forces them to, but because the players who don't play. High turnovers sit at just the 40th percentile, below average. This team doesn't press high and steal immediately. It presses to suffocate, slowly, deliberately. Seedorf said it directly after the February Champions League match. We should never, ever justify racial abuse. He was responding to the Vinicius incident, but that moment showed something else. Mourinho still operates at a temperature most managers can't sustain, and that is not separate from the method. That is the method. Making players uncomfortable is not a side effect of how he works. It is how he works. Here is what the Real Madrid problem actually looks like on a football pitch. It is not a tactical problem. Their system is fine. It is not a fitness problem. Their squad depth is exceptional. It is a problem of effort without consequence. Players who press when they feel like it. Forwards who do not track back because nothing happens when they don't. A dressing room where individual status has quietly become more important than collective discipline, and where no previous manager has been willing or able to change that. The most expensive squads in football history do not automatically produce the most disciplined environments. Often they produce the opposite. Because when every player in the room believes they are the exception, the one whose individual quality excuses them from the collective demands the room stops functioning as a team. That is not a new problem in football, and Mourinho has solved it before, more than once. The method is not subtle, and it is not gentle, but the evidence for it is sitting right there in the careers of some of the most difficult players in the history of the game. In 2008, Mourinho arrived at Inter Milan. The squad had talent. It also had Zlatan Ibrahimovic, one of the most gifted and most difficult players in the world, and a teenage Mario Balotelli, who Mourinho himself later described as unmanageable. What happened next is worth understanding. Ibrahimovic finished that season as Serie A's top scorer with 25 goals. Inter won the title. The following year, without Ibrahimovic, who had left for Barcelona, Mourinho won the Champions League. And Balotelli? When the teenager pushed back against team rules, Mourinho's response was precise. He told the squad, Balotelli returns only when he apologizes to every player in the room and to the manager personally. Balotelli apologized. They ended the season as treble winners. This is the pattern, not charm, not motivation speeches. A clear, non-negotiable standard applied equally to the biggest names in the room and the youngest players in the squad. No exceptions based on salary. No protection based on reputation. Ibrahimovic called it a mind game. Snyder called it something simpler. Mourinho protected us always, but you don't mess him about. Real Madrid's dressing room in 2026 has players who have not been messed about in years. That is the problem. And that is exactly what Mourinho was built to fix. The obvious counter-argument, though, is that Ibrahimovic and Balotelli were not Mbappe, and Mourinho was not walking into the most powerful institution in world football. The obvious counter-argument: Benfica are not Real Madrid. The players Mourinho managed in Lisbon were not Mbappe. Handling difficult personalities at a mid-tier European club and doing it at the most powerful club in the world are not the same job. That's fair. And the controversy this season didn't disappear quietly. Hasselbank said it bluntly, and the criticism landed. It didn't go away. Mourinho's ability to disrupt comfortable environments and his ability to generate controversy are not separate things. You don't get one without the other. Real Madrid are about to find out whether the trade-off is worth it. But before deciding, there's one moment that answers this entire debate, and it happened the last time he was at this club. The 2011-12 La Liga season, Mourinho's second year at Real Madrid. The year they finished with 100 points and 121 goals. A goals record that still stands in Spanish football today. That season, Mourinho and Casillas had a working relationship. Fractious at times, but functional. They won the title together. What happened next is the more revealing story. The following season, December 2012, Mourinho dropped Casillas, the club captain, World Cup winner, a man the institution had treated as untouchable for over a decade. He put him on the bench against Malaga, told the press it was a technical decision, and made it clear that no previous achievement at Real Madrid guaranteed your place. The dressing room split. Senior players reportedly told the president, Mourinho leaves, or we do. He left by mutual consent at the end of 2012-13. But here is what the record shows. In the season when Mourinho made the most powerful players in that squad feel genuinely threatened, they produced the greatest league campaign in Spanish football history, is 121 goals. The record still stands. Real Madrid have the talent, the money, the history. What they have not had for several years now is a room where accountability is something players actually feel, rather than publicly perform. Mourinho is not the elegant answer. He never has been. He costs you something in controversy, in noise, in relationships that don't survive contact with him. That's a real cost. But there's a version of leadership the sport keeps undervaluing. The kind that doesn't ask players to believe in something. The kind that simply forces them to look at the gap between who they think they are and what they're actually producing. The evidence has been there since 2012. The sport will catch up eventually. So what do you think? Can Mourinho actually change Real Madrid from the inside? Or does this end the same way it always does? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. I'm Stephen Wilson. This is Philosophy of Football. If this is the kind of analysis you're here for, subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.